welcome to the Cardinal News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit news outlet covering Southwest and Southside Virginia at cardinalnews.org. The Cardinal podcast is sponsored by Muneris, serving communities with expert group benefits and Medicare solutions. I'm Dutchie Jessee. An unsettling trend has developed in Scott County near the Virginia-Tennessee border. Children in at least 12 families have been diagnosed with cancer there in the last 5 years. It's so unusual that some families have begun to organize to find out why. Cardinal's healthcare reporter Emily Schabacker is covering this and is here to talk about a disturbing story. Hello, Emily. Welcome.
Hi, Dutchie.
Thank you so much for coming to talk about your work here and covering this. The headline for a recent story you wrote about this included the phrase cancer cluster. It's taking place in the region that borders Tennessee with Virginia. So first, I want to define a term that you'll hear in this, that you'll read in her coverage as well, and that is Lennowisco Health District, if I'm saying that right. So define that region.
So the Lennowisco Health District is in far southwest Virginia, and it covers the counties of Lee, Wise, Scott, and the city of Norton.
All right. What's going on there with regards to pediatric cancer?
So the focus of this story is in Scott County, and a group of residents in Scott County started reporting numbers of pediatric cancer cases to the Virginia Registry of Cancer. These families have kind of organized because they all have kids who have been diagnosed with some type of cancer, and they, felt that it was an unusually high number for their small community.
Right, and I believe that it sort of was, brought to light or noticed by an oncology nurse down there. Is that right?
Yes, and
correct me if I'm wrong. No worries.
Yeah, no. So Megan Smith has been an oncology nurse in Scott County for about 17 years, and she was friends with some of these families who had kids who were diagnosed with pediatric cancers. And these families had kind of organized in a shared group chat to support each other and, kind of provide a little bit of community around this really difficult issue. And so as Megan Smith was kind of in touch with these families, she noticed that there were quite a few cases of B-cell leukemia in particular. And then there were also other cases of brain tumors that have some similarities across cases. And to her, that really kind of sent off alarm bells. And she started to dig a little bit deeper into the research. She's mostly worked with adults in her career, but she's familiar with the research and finding this data. So she started digging into the data a little bit and really helped these families start to organize and come together. And she worked with them to file reports to the state.
So you alluded to B-cell leukemia and brain tumors. My next question was, are these all similar cancers? I mean, they're all pediatric cancers, but do they have similar, without getting too medical, because I know you're not a doctor, but from your coverage, are they similar types of cancer that are affecting kids?
So, I want to be really careful about how I talk about this topic to avoid being alarmist.
Sure.
Right now, there is no publicly available data from the state. So all this information that I have gathered is very anecdotal from the mothers that I interviewed in Scott County. So, I've heard of, Megan Smith told me that she has talked to about 4 families who have kids that were diagnosed with leukemia. There's a handful of other kids who have been diagnosed with brain tumors. There is another mother I spoke to listed off several different types of cancers. Everything from thyroid cancer to testicular cancer to bone cancer. I also talked to another mother. Her child was diagnosed with a neuroblastoma. So it's really hard to say definitively how many different types of cancers and if there are unusual groupings or not. So.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Because we do want to be responsible, of course. And the other part of that I want to get to is, You mentioned the word alarmist. I think, any pediatric cancer, any child with cancer is shocking and disturbing to us, rightfully so. Any cancer is. But with pediatrics, it comes as a special shock, and it's, I think it disturbs people individually and collectively, right, in a community, in a society. So I want to be careful with how we then define how much on the radar Scott County is now because of the size of Scott County in relation to the number of peds cancer cases there. So as much as you can factually talk about why this raised eyebrows with Megan and someone who's kind of in the know about it relative, because that's going to be relative again to the size of this town, this community.
Yeah, so when I spoke with Megan, we talked a lot about the leukemia cases. Leukemia is the most common type of childhood cancer, and nationally we would expect to see about 4 cases of leukemia out of 100,000 kids.
Okay.
So if you scale that back to the size of Scott County, which is about 20,000 residents, and having 4 kids diagnosed within about the last 2 years. Again, this is all anecdotal. Okay. And so that would, that is a much higher rate than we would expect to see. I mean, that's about 10 times higher than what we would expect to see nationally. So that's really why Megan thought that this was really important to start reporting to the state, to at least get some eyes on it, get some scientists involved and some researchers, just to see if there's a potential external factor that's, causing these health issues.
So then let's, you mentioned a lot of this coverage that you've been able to do is anecdotal because you've been talking to families. And the families, there's some organization there, Facebook group and a hashtag even, Scott County Strong. Tell me who you talked to and what you learned and your experience of talking to them, spending some time with them.
Yeah, so I got in touch with about 3 mothers, and then as well as Megan, who's none of her children have been diagnosed with cancer, but she helped put me in touch with some of these other mothers. And, they have really kind of come together. It all started kind of with the group chat as these women sort of heard about one another in the community and decided that they would like to meet to kind of support each other. They also, run into each other when their kids are getting treatment. A lot of them go to Memphis to St. Jude Research Hospital there for their kids' treatments, and they see each other there. And so it started with a group chat where they were just texting back and forth. And as they started learning more and more about other families, I think now there's about 12 people in this group chat, and they wanted to be able to organize around social media so they could stay in touch and maybe, host some events and things like that. So they started a hashtag called Scott County Strong. And so if you search that in Facebook or on Instagram, you get a lot of pictures of people from the area. And they recently had an event, actually. It was, originally just going to be, they wanted to have some photos taken of the kids and the families and things like that. But it turned out to be this big sort of benefit event. And, all the kids got together. There were some fun festivities and some really beautiful pictures that were taken.
They have the Facebook group that you mentioned and have organized a little bit more. What's happening in terms of anything official? The state investigating or bring in the state here for me.
Yeah, so, as we talked about, some families started reporting to the Virginia Cancer Registry. And from there, apparently enough people reported to the state that the Lenawisco Health District has launched an investigation into a potential cancer cluster. The state was not able to provide any data as to, how many people reported. They didn't provide any data as to, what the threshold is that they usually look for. So in terms of if X number of people report from the same community, then they launch an investigation. Again, they have very strict guidelines around confidentiality, so they weren't able to provide any of that information. But so the first step is the Lenawisco Health District released a survey to gather information from folks who have had, a child or somebody in their family diagnosed with cancer who's under the age of 19. So that would be pediatric cancer cases. So, they're still very much so in this early stage of trying to collect data, find out how many people have been diagnosed. They're looking at a time period from 2015 to 2025 so that they can compare the current number of pediatric cancer cases that have cropped up in the last 2 or 3 years, so they can compare that to the 10-year span to see if there's an actual statistical increase recently compared to what it would have been in 2015.
The kiddos affected here, can you tell me anything about them? Respect everyone's privacy, first names only if you have the first names, but just how are they doing?
Yeah, so the first family that I talked to, Oliver, he's now 6, I believe, almost 7, or he may have recently turned 7. And he was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma when he was 5. So he was just in kindergarten. Ewing sarcoma is a very aggressive form of cancer. It is, quite rare, and he went through a lot of treatment. It was a very difficult year. He went through 14 rounds of chemotherapy, multiple rounds of radiation. And, now he's on the other side of that, and he's technically in remission. His mom is still very worried about him, though. It's really challenging to see this happen to your very young child. And let's see, then I talked to Ashley Culbertson. She has a little girl who, she's just so cute. She's 4 years old, and she was recently diagnosed with B-cell leukemia. She is still undergoing treatment. She still has another 1.5 years of treatment to go. And, there have been multiple challenges through that. It's really, I think it's going to be a long journey for them, but she is doing really well right now.
Yeah.
And then I also talked to Amanda Taylor, and her son was diagnosed with a neuroblastoma when he was 4. And that's a cancer of the adrenal glands. And he has been, he's had to go through 3 separate rounds of treatment. He's gotten to the point of being in remission a few times, but then the cancer has reemerged. So he is back in Memphis right now at the hospital, preparing for his 3rd round of therapies. So.
And thanks to Ashley, because she shared some photos that ended up in your story, and they're really great photos. But we always appreciate it when when we can see a little bit of the picture that they want us to share with us. Emily, with cancer in general, there's frequently a genetic association or something along hereditary lines. With pediatric cancers, I'm not sure if that's as common, hereditary. The other part of that is that when you start using the word cluster, people are going to think about environmental causes. They're going to be thinking of that, I'm sure, speculating. What are you hearing from that? And again, I know you're going to be careful with facts versus anecdote, but can you set that, give us a little context there with these cases?
Yeah. So, many of the mothers have thoughts and ideas about, what could potentially be causing causing these health issues. Megan Smith has also done some research into some community environmental factors that could be at play. I'm a little hesitant to say exactly what those are. Because it could point to some, they're pretty significant allegations, and until we have some more information and some more state data, I just want to be careful about, voicing those.
Yeah, so. But is there a lot of chatter about that in the community, either on social, or did they share that with you?
Yeah, they definitely, multiple mothers have shared with me, they all are pointing towards one very specific potential environmental factor.
Okay.
So.
The other part of this, as you alluded to, how challenging it must be for a parent to have a child. It's traumatic to have a diagnosis come back like this, and then to watch your child go through these treatments. The organization that they've sort of formed, and the hashtag and the bonding and the events, have they talked to you about the emotional side of this? And they're benefiting, I'm hoping, from their getting together and just sharing these experiences. I did see someone on their in their chat on Facebook mentioning just making friends and talking about St. Jude's, just the fact that they now have to take this trip to St. Jude's. You know, they've joined a club they didn't look to join. That can be very traumatic on the adults as well. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that they have formed a really wonderful community. I mean, it's not an experience that I think that anyone can understand until they're in the middle of it. And they've really been able to support each other. You know, when their kids are going through significant treatments where they have to be in Memphis, St. Jude's provides housing for the family so that they can be there. And, you know, oftentimes they're all going through these really intense treatments with their kids, you know, in Memphis. And so they're able to see each other when they're there and kind of, you know, go out for coffee and you know, chat with one another. I think it's been very therapeutic for them to all kind of be together and support one another, and honestly to just celebrate their kids. You know, other kids who look like, you know, each other, who have maybe had challenges with like hair loss and things like that. Just to really bond over this shared experience, even though it's a very traumatic one.
Do their friends back home? I mean, these are young kids. So as far as schooling goes, how are the schools supporting them, or is that a factor now? And do their friends understand? Because these are young kids. It's a lot to try and grasp at that young age.
Yeah, you know, I did not talk to the mothers about that. I would expect some of their schooling has been disrupted, and I can imagine it's a real challenge, but I did not speak to them about that specifically.
So what's next? You mentioned the survey where the state is trying to get some data and some information from people in this county. So what's next? What are we looking for here?
So, you know, one of the biggest challenges, or the first challenge, is collecting enough data to share that, or to show that there's a statistically significant increase in cancer cases. So right now they're just trying to really collect as much data as possible, and then they'll go through and review it. And there are multiple factors that they will be looking for, including if these cancers share similar features, if they're maybe from the same family. All of those things could point to maybe one, you know, potential environmental factor that could be playing into this. And if they find that to be true, then they will, you know, start initiating some environmental studies or things along those lines that would pertain to the specific cases.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, we will look for more coverage as it's warranted. But thank you for taking the time to write about this at cardinalnews.org. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you for this story or anything, you're on the healthcare beat for us, and that's a pretty big topic area to cover. How should they reach out to you?
They can reach me via my email, which is emily@cardinalnews.org.
All right, thank you so much. And this is the first time I've had you at the podcast since you were recognized as the Outstanding Young Journalist of the Year by the Virginia Press Association. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were looking forward to more coverage from you. So everyone, thanks for listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia, and thanks to our sponsor, Munaris. Also want to thank our own Zach Shelton and Sherry Quinley for their production support. Read all of our paywall-free journalism at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee.
From Red Oak to Greenville, Bluefield to Orange, and Gold Vein to Silver Beach, the Virginia Press Room features the voices of Virginia's press corps from every corner of Virginia. The podcast is a joint production of the Virginia Public Access Project and VPM News. Get the top headlines of the week and the inside scoop on Virginia politics when our top reporters open their notebooks and tell us the story behind the story. New episodes every Monday morning.